So today we're going to be talking about weak ankles. We're going to go over what weak ankles are, what they're not, and then we'll look at some of the anatomy and some of the structures and sort of mechanisms that the body uses to keep ankles stable and strong. And then after that, then we'll look at how some of those structures fail to give weak ankles, and then we'll go through some exercises that will help rehabilitate people and help people look after their ankles. So I hope that all sounds good. So some of the causes of weak ankles, sometimes it can be weak muscles, so that's probably one of the biggest causes. We've also got perceived instability. How can I get the pointer up? Pointer options, there we go. Not that one. There we go, so we've got a bit of a pointer. So we've got perceived instability. This is a huge one as well. A lot of people, after they've had an injury to the ankle, like a lateral ankle sprain, they have perceived instability. The brain isn't getting the same sort of neural feedback that it normally does do from the ankle, and they also have like a psychological desire not to get hurt again. They don't want to repeat the injury, so people are very cautious about using their ankle. So we have a big psychological aspect, and that's the perceived instability. So then the ankle itself might not be weak, the muscles might be like super strong, but because the innervation to those muscles isn't quite the same, the feedback to the brain isn't quite as good, then we have like a perceived instability of to the ankle. Moving on, injured structures. So we can have ligaments and tendons. They can become injured, and if they're injured or damaged, then they're not going to be transmitting the forces from the muscles that they normally would do. So tendons, these are they come from they attach muscle to bone, so they transmit force from the muscle to the bone in order to create movements. So if they're injured, then the force from the muscle isn't going to be transmitted as efficiently as it normally would do, and the elasticity of the tendon isn't going to work as well. So yeah, injured structures are another form. Poor coordination and proprioception. Sometimes poor coordination can be because somebody is learning a new activity. Because they're learning the new activity, then they haven't actually got the motor control in order to carry out that activity. They haven't got that coordination that's required. If you imagine somebody learning to play the piano, they can have really strong fingers, but they haven't got the finger control in order to play the piano. They haven't learned that dexterity. So coordination is another form of weak ankles. Proprioception, this is linked with coordination. Proprioception is like the ability to know where your body is in space. So an example of that is if you hold your arms out and close your eyes, it's proprioception that allows you to touch the end of your nose. So it's proprioception is sort of knowing where your body is in space, and that really does link well with ankles, because if we don't know the position of the foot and the ankle, then it's likely that we're going to go over on the ankle and cause some issues there. So proprioception is a huge part there, and we'll go through how we build proprioception later on. Footwear, that's another big factor. If we're wearing shoes that aren't suitable, especially high heels and things, they make the foot very unstable. And when we look at bones in a second, I've just realised I've put my skeleton foot down somewhere. Then we'll show you some of the bony things which make the foot more stable. Health conditions such as diabetes, that they can make the joints unstable as well, because we lose nervous control. That the nerves on the periphery start to die off with conditions like diabetes, so we don't get that nervous feedback, and that can make ankles feel weak. Natural joint laxity. Some people with conditions like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or just generally just having lax joints, will also have weak ankles, and bone structure as well. That can have a big influence. So with this list here, the stuff that's in bold, that they're conditions that we can help. We can do a lot. We can do a lot with these bits here. We can adjust those via exercise and with different clinical interventions. With these ones down at the bottom, there's not a lot we can do with those, unfortunately. We can help manage things like diabetes and other conditions and joint laxity, but we're not going to be able to resolve those. That's just how you are. And the same with bone structure. If it's something really severe, then there's always surgery, but generally there's not a lot you can do to change the structure. Let's have a look at some of the bones. The bone structure. So the ankle is made up of 3 bones. We've got the tibia, the fibula, and the talus. They make up the actual ankle. So it's this bit here, which is the actual ankle joint. Then if we spin this round, we've got another joint under here made up of the talus and the calcaneus, and this is what we call the subtalar joint, and that's where we get the side-to-side motion. At the actual ankle itself, that's where the foot goes up and down. Okay, so we've got at the ankle, we've got this motion going on, and the subtalar joint, that's where we get the inversion and eversion. There you go. So that's the actual ankle, and when we talk about lateral ankle sprains, it's usually around this side here that gets injured when we go over. If we just take a closer look at the talus, we can see that it's wide at this point, and if we look at the back of it, then it's quite narrow at that point. So if the foot is in this position, then it's quite stable. That bone fills that cavity in there, so it's quite stable in that position. If the foot goes into plantar flexion, so it goes down to that position, just got to imagine these bones are still going up, then it's this narrow part of the bone that's going to be fitting into the joint, and because it's narrow, it allows a lot more instability. There's a lot more movement going on. So if you're wearing sort of high-heeled shoes, then that puts the ankle joint into plantar flexion and makes it really unstable. So that's one way that the bones help influence the stability of the ankle, and how footwear can as well. Next bit, let's have a look at the next bit. Okay, so I've not got a model of this, but this is the where's my pointer gone? So this is the ligaments. When these are the medial ligaments here, there's 3 of them, but we basically always lump it together as one big ligament called the deltoid ligament. So this is the medial side of the foot. So this is the big toe side here. So we're looking at the inside edge of the foot. Now these ones do get injured, but they're quite rare in relation to the ligaments on the other side. So let's have a look at those. So this is the outside edge of the foot. So this is the little toe on the lateral side of the foot, and then up here, this is the knobbly bit on the side of your ankle, and then this is your heel bone. Now we have 3 little tendons on this side. We've got this one here, the anterior talofibular ligament. We've got one that's not shown on this diagram called the posterior talofibular ligament, and we've got this one here, the calcaneofibular ligament. Don't worry about the names of them. That's not really important for the sake of this demonstration. But you just need to know these 2 are the 2 that get injured most often. But when we talk about a lateral ankle sprain, somebody going over on their ankle, then the ankle comes up all big, black and blue and swollen, and it's usually one of or both of these 2 ligaments that have been damaged. Now, quite often, people think of ligaments as being just little bits of stringy rope that hold the joint together. That is true. That's their job. They basically hold bone to bone and stop joints from sliding apart. But they're also quite a complex organ in their own right. These ligaments, as well as holding the joint together and adding stability to the ankle joint, they also have receptors in them as well, which detect stretch. So if these start becoming stretched, they send a nervous signal up to the spine, and then the spine sends a nervous signal back, and it makes the muscles contract in order to protect the joint. So these are absolutely vital for holding the joint together and sending nervous signals to the brain to tell the brain what position the foot's in. And we were talking about proprioception earlier, knowing quite where your body is in space. Then these are a huge component of that. When they get stretched, they tell the brain that they're being stretched, and it helps the brain sort of know where the foot is. And also, when they start becoming stretched, then they create reflexes. Basically, the nervous impulse goes from the ligament up to the spine and back down, makes the muscles contract in order to protect the body. So these are really, really important structures for feeding information to the brain, as well as holding the joint together. Okay, so that's another structure and mechanism within the foot. Let's have a look at the next one. What else do we have on there? The muscles. Yes, let's have a look at the muscles. The muscles within the foot. We've got the main muscles that everybody knows about down the back of the leg. This gastrocnemius and soleus, and they feed into the Achilles tendon and then into the foot, and they're responsible for plantar flexion of the ankle, that sort of motion. The antagonists to those, the foot muscles that work against it, are down the front of the shin here. The main one is called tibialis anterior, but we've also got the muscles that lift the toes up as well. And that's responsible for sort of what the motion we call dorsiflexion, which is lifting the foot up. Okay, so we've got the calf muscles, which do that, the antagonists on the front, which lift the front up. And then if we spin round, we've also got muscles going down the sides of the leg as well. So the muscles on the outside, the perineal muscles, they're responsible for everting the foot, sort of that sort of motion. Quite often what we call pronation. So it's the arch of the foot coming down. And then we've got another one which comes down behind the tibia bone. Quite often you can feel it. If you find the edge of the tibia bone, you can actually feel that muscle working. It's tucked right behind there. It comes down behind the lumpy bit of the ankle and inserts right around here, and that's responsible for inverting the foot, sort of lifting the foot up like that. Okay, so how do those... Let's see if we can move back so we can get that. No, that's not going to happen. So how do those muscles work together in order to stabilise the foot? Let's just spin it back to this camera. Okay, so we've got one set of muscles coming down here, which do the plantar flexion. We've got another set coming down the front, which do that. And then we've got muscles coming down either side, which allow us to evert and invert the foot. So if these muscles coming down this side contract, then we get this eversion of the foot. The foot's going over that way, and then these ones here invert it. So what happens if both sets of muscles contract at the same time? Something we call a co-contraction. Both muscles, which usually antagonize each other, are going to work at the same time. And both contract simultaneously. What happens then is the whole foot gets pulled upwards. So the calcaneus, the heel bone, gets pulled into the talus, and the talus gets pulled into the ankle. And that really, so the whole lot sort of lifts up into the ankle, which makes that ankle really, really stable. It stops it from being able to move either way. because the muscles are both going to resist each other and really make that ankle stable. And the same happens from back to front as well. The calf muscles will contract, the muscles on the anterior compartment will contract, and they basically just pull the whole foot into the ankle and make that ankle really stable. Okay, so that's some of the mechanisms that we have to stabilize the foot. We've got the ligaments, which hold the joint together and add stability, and they also create reflexes, so that they generate nerve impulses which make the muscles fire up to stabilize the foot. We've got the actual shape of the bone, which adds stability, and we've got the muscle contraction as well, which will help to stabilize the foot. Right, so what happens if those systems start to go wrong? If we've had a lateral ankle sprain, so somebody's gone over on their ankle, those little ligaments around the side, they've become damaged, they may have completely ruptured, they may have just been stretched a bit or just damaged in some sort of way. And obviously and quite often as well, when we go over an ankle and we damage the tendon as well from the going around the foot, so we lose a lot of nervous feedback to the brain. We lose that stimulus from those ligaments. If we don't lose it, then the brain becomes confused. It's not getting the same information that it would if those ligaments were fully intact. They basically work on stretch, but when they get stretched, then that nervous impulse gets fired. So if they've become damaged and overstretched, then that stretch isn't going to happen. So we lose that nervous stimulation to the brain. So the actual ankle itself will be less stable, and we'll also lose the nervous feedback to try and get the muscles to stabilize the ankle. So I'm not going to talk about the initial first aid of what we do with an injured ankle. So once the ankle's recovered and all that swelling's gone down, then we're going to talk about what we do then with the aftermath. But when it's all, what you also need to do is make sure it's not all structures that get damaged as well. We also have a lot of psychological and sociological issues as well when somebody's injured. It's what we call the biopsychosocial model of healthcare. Although the structures within the ankle have become injured, we've also got somebody with an injury, got a lot of psychological problems as well, about fear of movement, fear of repeating the injury again. If they're a runner, then it's quite likely they've not been down to the running club, sort of lost contact with friends. So end up like a sociological factors as well with injury. It's not just about getting the structures healthy and strong. We've also got to look after the whole of the person and not just their ankle as well. So that's a really important factor to make sure that we take into account as well. But for the sake of this webinar, I'm just going to be focusing on the physical rehabilitation, and we'll touch on the psychosocial aspects. So when we're strengthening, but when we're going through the rehab process, we're just basically taking an injured runner or an injured person, they don't have to be a runner, and we're going to move them along a continuum to get them to a point where they're going back to exercise and carrying out the activities that they enjoy doing. To start with, I'm just going to close another window. Hopefully should still be able to see me all right. So to start that rehabilitation process, we need to start building strength into the tissues. So we start off up this end here. We start off with building strength with isometric exercises. Now, isometric, iso basically means same, and metric means measurement. So this means same measurement. So there's no movement going on with an isometric exercise. We're literally just contracting the muscles against a resistance that's not going to move. So we start building strength into the muscle, putting it under tension, putting the tendon under tension, and we start building that that's strength that way. Now with that, we're going to be moving a force that we cannot move. So should I explain? This is what we call a force velocity curve. So the bigger the force that we're trying to move, the lower the velocity. Because obviously if we're moving a heavy load, then we're not going to be able to move it as fast as we could if it was a really light load. So down this end of the force velocity curve, we're trying to move an immovable load. So it's the actual maximum force that we can make, and there's going to be no velocity, there's going to be no movement at all. And then as we progress through the rehabilitation process, and as we get back to running, then we're going to have sort of maximum agility and speed, but we're not going to have any extra force. It's just literally going to be body weight that we're moving. We're not going to be moving any more than that. I'm going to give you an example of each of these exercises for each of these stages as well. So keep watching, and we'll go through some of those. So we start off with maximum strength. At this stage, we've got to imagine somebody's quite injured, and they're just starting to weight bear again on the leg. So this is like, not everybody's going to start off at this. If you only have like a mild ankle sprain, you might be starting the process down here. But for somebody that's been very injured, then they're going to be starting up at this end. So after we've progressed from maximum strength against the isometrics with no movement, we're going to move on to strength. This is generally what we think about. But when we see the grunters down at the gym, the knuckle draggers down at the gym, this is the type of thing that they're doing. They're picking up very heavy weights, or very, very slow movement. So we're still moving big weights, but the movements that we're doing are literally just up and down. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just lifting a weight up and putting the weight back down. And they're big weights as well that we're trying to move. As we progress, move on to more of the power exercises. So it's still pretty big weights that we're moving. They're not going to be as big as the maximum strength weights, but we're going to be moving them with more force. So we're going to be moving them faster. So the muscles are still going to be contracting hard, but we're going to be using a lighter weight, and we're going to be moving it faster. And we may be adding in a bit more complicated movement. So at this stage here, the strength is just literally up and down. With the power, we might be adding in some jumps as well. So we might be able to lift the weight and jump the weight off the floor, or we might be adding in some lunges as well, just a more complicated movement rather than just straight up and down. Moving on again, move on to speed strength. This is what we call the plyometrics. We've got if a tendon or ligament's been very badly damaged, it's lost a lot of its strength. In the plyometric stage, we've got the strength back up. It's able to tolerate a lot of strength due to the exercise we've been doing at this stage. And in the plyometric phase, we're trying to make those tendons and structures more elastic so they can store and return energy. Anyone that's new to running, or anyone that can remember being a new runner, will remember when they started running that they felt like a real plodder. It took a lot of effort for them to plod along, and then when they looked at sort of more experienced, more elite runners, then it looks like they're just bouncing along and just skipping along and moving really effortless. And quite, I don't want to say that's because they are, because they are putting a lot of effort in, but basically their bodies become more economical in the way that it moves. It's able to store energy and then release it as the tendons start acting like elastic bands, so they can store energy and then release it on each step. So they are basically springing along, but a novice runner, their tendons don't have that springy elasticness, but they will develop if they carry out plyometric exercises. But when we're doing plyometrics, then they are really, really intense exercises, and people are at high risk of injury with plyometrics. So it's worth getting a bit of guidance on carrying out plyometrics. I'll give you some demonstrations of what makes a good plyometric exercise. And then the last bit speed and agility. This is getting quick turns and changes of direction, and basically being more agile whilst we're moving. When we're training for speed and agility and for basic plyometrics, we're not adding any extra weight. But down at this end, where we are adding big weights, at this end, then there's no extra weight added. We're literally just doing it with body weight, and maybe a tiny little bit of extra weight, but nothing major. Okay, so that's building the strength back up into the tissues and trying to get the muscles, the tendons and ligaments and the bones stronger as well. So what happens then, because that's not, we can't just rely on building strength, as hopefully this video will show, if it's going to play. Here we go. So these guys, fell running, it's a northern sport. If you're in the south, I'm sorry, but you're missing out on this one because there's no fell running. In the south, you have trail running, but it's not quite the same. So you're missing out on this one. But these guys are fell running. If you can look at their legs, they are doing a lot of work. I reckon all of these guys, that's one way to go down to saving your ankles. But I reckon most of these guys have had lateral ankle sprains in the past. Let's see if we can get that to replay. No. Let go again. Let's see. So this is actually a great skill, being able to run downhill. We have to rely on more than just muscular strength. We have to have that agility to be able to move, but we also have to rely on other senses feeding information to the brain. And this is sort of where some of that perceived ankle instability comes from. And it's other senses that feed to the brain, and that's something that we call feed forward and feedback mechanisms. How can I get onto the next slide? Why is it not changing? There we go. Right, I'm just going to come off the screen share and I'll talk about feed forward and feedback. Feed forwards and feedback are learned things. It's something that our brain has to learn to do. So a feed forward mechanism, if we're if we're running along a tarmac road, and then we come off the tarmac road and we go onto a grassy, muddy track, we can do that without having to think about it. Our brain will automatically adjust our stride length, the muscle contraction and everything else to be able to run from one surface to the next surface without having to think about how slippy the road is, what sort of angle the ground's at. It does it without having to think about it. It's what we call a feed forward mechanism. The eyes sort of detect what the ground's like ahead of us, and then the brain will automatically adjust our stride length and our muscle tonicity, how much the muscles are contracting before we've even gone onto the new surface. So the brain's anticipating what it's going to be like to run on that surface. That's what we call a feed forward mechanism. It's a learned thing that you acquire from running on different surfaces. A feedback mechanism works in conjunction with a feed forward. Basically, when the foot hits the ground, the ligaments, the tendons will detect what angle the ground's at or how hard it is, and it will feed information back to the brain to adjust what the muscles in the leg and the foot are doing. So imagine if we're running along, it's a very flat road that we're running along, and then all of a sudden the camber of the road changes, the foot, so we've gone off from flat surface like that, we've gone onto a bit of a camber, the foot lands on it, and the foot has to change position. The tendons, the ligaments will stretch. That'll send nervous impulses to the brain saying we've changed position, adjust what's going on, and then the brain will adjust the muscle contractions in order to stabilize the foot. So a feed forward is being able to detect, sort of anticipate what's coming up ahead, and the brain automatically adjusting the body. And feedback is the body picking up information that's occurring now and then feeding that back to the brain. So as well as getting the body strong and building strength into the tissues, we also have to develop activity related skills as well. And that's where myself as a rehab practitioner will work alongside sports coaches to get an athlete ready to go back to sport. So I'll take somebody that's been badly injured, I'll get them up to the point where they can start participating in their activity, and then the sports coach will come in and start doing more sport specific drills with them in order to develop those feedback and feed forward mechanisms. Hoping that's making sense so far. Right, let's go back to the presentation bit, and hopefully we'll be able to move on to some of the physical demonstrations. Right, so this was a paper. I think if you go onto Google and just type that in, then you should be able to find a copy of this. Jill Cook, she's a brilliant researcher for tendon injuries. So yeah, very, very worth having a read up of Jill Cook's work in Solis Mascaro. And this is basically a diagram representation of rehabilitating Achilles and tendon problems. So it's basically the same as that force velocity curve, but it's just broken down for rehabilitation. So what it shows is if somebody's injured, they're down at this end of the scale, over time we're going to increase the load going through their body. So we're going to increase the intensity, volume and the frequency of the exercise that they're doing, and we're going to gradually progress them through these different stages of rehabilitation. So if they're badly injured, we start doing isometric work. We start building the intensity, the volume and the frequency of the isometric exercises. Then once they're up to a sufficient strength, then we'll move them on to strength work. Again, we'll build up the intensity, volume and frequency, and then move on to functional strength. And we keep repeating that until they're up to the level where they can start going back to return to play. And then after return to play, they can go back to full participation in sport alongside their. We're going to go through some of the exercises that we can do at different levels of rehabilitation. So this is probably what you've all been coming for, but I think the theory behind it is necessary in order for people to understand what's good rehab and what isn't good rehab. So I just want to reiterate, we're not going through the psychological aspects or the sociological, we're just going through the physical things that we can do to help strengthen ankles. So let's go blue band, come. Right, I think we're definitely going to get joined by the dog for this one. So these exercises now, these are very, very simple exercises that we can do for, these are the isometrics that we'll start off with. I'm just going to spin the camera around to a different one. There we go. So an isometric exercise, if we're trying to strengthen the tibialis posterior, the muscle that inverts the foot, and move back a bit. We're basically trying to, for an isometric, we're just pushing the foot into the chair. We're just trying to contract that muscle as hard as we can into the chair leg. You can use a wall as well, and you're just pushing that foot and just holding that position as hard as you can. And that's basically an isometric exercise. If we're going to strengthen the perineal muscles, the opposite muscle, then just put your foot round to the other side and just pushing your foot as hard as you can into that object that's not moving. Okay, so really, really simple, the isometrics. There's nothing too complicated about them. So but yeah, they're mostly used for people that are in the very early stages of rehabilitation. So strength exercises with weak ankles. What we know is if somebody has a lateral ankle sprain or suffering from weak ankles, science shows that they've also got hip strength deficits as well. So it's not just the ankles that we need to strengthen, it's the whole of the lower limb. We need to get the hips stronger too. So we're going to start adding in some hip exercises, some whole leg exercises, and some exercises for strengthening the ankles as well. The simplest one that we use for strengthening the ankles are calf raises. So that's literally just going up and down. And ideally, we need to build that up so that we can do about 2 to 3 times body weight. So we're looking at big weight that you have to be able to move, being able to go up and down. If you want one times body weight, then just do it on 1 foot. If you want to build that up more, then the best way of doing it at home is with a rucksack. If you haven't got any gym equipment, just get a rucksack, fill it up with a load of books, and just try and put the rucksack on and start doing those calf raises on 1 foot as best as you can. If you have got a gym, then seated calf raise is a good one for focusing on the soleus muscle, but for focusing on the gastroc and trying to concentrate on the ankle muscles as well. We do it with their feet turned into different positions, and that just subtly changes the way the muscles work, and you can shift the emphasis onto different muscles by moving the position of the feet. For strengthening the hips as well, then the classic, the real classic one is squats. So you're going to have if you're at home with limited weights access, then the rucksack again with some big weights, or shopping bags full of whatever, just adding some more weight. But yeah, squats, we just basically going shoulder width apart with your feet, and then we're going down as low as you can and back up again. So that's a classic strength exercise. It's very simple. It's just down and up. There's nothing too dynamic about it. There's nothing complicated about the movements. Just up and down. Dead simple. So that's the strength one. We'll miss out functional strength, and we'll head more to the plyometrics now. Let's just grab that. So very common plyometric one with quite low load is skipping. I'm not going to give you a demonstration now because I'm in my living room. We've not got enough space to spin the skipping round. I know I look a bit stupid when I skip as well, so I'm not going to do that one now. But skipping is a really good plyometric exercise. It's building elasticity into the tendons. It's getting them to spring up and down. So when we're skipping, we don't want the heel touching the floor. We need to keep on the toes and just getting elasticity into those muscles, which is absolutely vital to make an efficient running gait. More complex ones than skipping is jumping off a step. So fitting my step away down there, so it's not too easy. So you basically standing. You've got to imagine starting on a step, jump off the step, land, and then jump back up. That's sort of like quite an intense sort of plyometric exercise. Yeah, good point. So that's how we go through the strength thing. To develop the feedback and feed forward mechanisms, we do need exposure to the actual activities that we're doing, but we can also start developing that nervous control in the gym as well. So one way of doing that, just with basically again, standing up, just standing on one leg, just practice that. A lot of people with ankle instability, they will struggle to stand on one leg. It's amazing how people come into the clinic and we ask them to stand on one leg and they're all over the place. They don't realise that they can't do it. So we basically build people up so they learn to balance on one leg and the other leg as well. That's another thing. If we say damage the right ankle, then we also end up having motor control issues on the good side as well, the non-damaged side. So yeah, we need to redevelop the strength and stability in both sides, not just the injured one. So that's something to be aware of. So after we've got somebody balancing on one leg, then we have to start adding a bit of movement to it. So really simple way of doing that. Just a light weight. This one's just 5 kilograms, and just passing that weight around the body, and you'll feel that your foot starts wobbling all over the place to try and correct that movement, and that's just rebuilding those nervous pathways between the sensory mechanisms in the foot and the brain. So that's another good exercise for redeveloping that stability. And the last one that I want to show you is with unstable surfaces. So quite often wobber boards, Bosu, Swiss balls, they're used, but I'm not a great fan of those myself. I think they're too unstable. They're not very realistic for everyday life. So what I do like though, these AirTex mats, it's basically just like a big sort of memory foam, but a bit more rubbery. You can get them from Amazon and places for not very much. So you basically just stick. But once you're able to balance on one foot quite easily, then you just stick that on the floor. It's a bit of instability, so it's just going to move under your foot, and you'll be able to feel your leg moving to try and control your motions as well. So yeah, once you can balance on one leg on a stable surface, move on to an unstable surface, then start developing those. If you haven't got one of these, next best option, it's just a cushion off your couch. That also takes away the instability. It's a little more stable than the AirTex cushion, but it still works pretty good as well. So there's plenty of things you can be doing at home to develop those sort of nervous pathways between the ankle and the brain, and developing strength as well. Okay, so I'll just move the stuff out of the way. I have one calf muscle much weaker than the other. Should I exercise just that one side or both? Always try and exercise both. It's good to have both muscles strong. What we have to look for though is, why is that one muscle weaker? If it's come from an injury, then we still need to develop the strength in both sides. So I'd definitely probably recommend going to someone like myself, or a physio, or somebody that knows about ankles, and just try and work out why that one muscle is weaker than the other side. That's probably the most important thing, really. When to use the TheraBand. So TheraBand, for people that don't know, is this sort of rubber band type of stuff, which you can get quite easily. If somebody's got a specific part of their, so say somebody's not able to carry out a calf raise. So the calf raise exercise is standing on the step, going up and down. Then we can use the TheraBand to start building strength into that muscle. So we can put the TheraBand around the foot and start pushing against the TheraBand, because it's a lighter load than doing a calf raise. But we don't want to be doing light loads for too long. We need to progress things, and that's quite often the problem with why a lot of rehabilitation gets prolonged too long, is because people don't progress from the light loads to the heavier stuff quick enough. So TheraBands are there when people can't tolerate doing bodyweight exercises. Then we can use TheraBands for lighter loads. We need to progress quite quickly. Is it worth doing rehab years after a series of sprains and breaks? Complaints of weak ankle stance. Yes, yeah, what we call chronic ankle instability is when it's been going on for a long time. Developing strength and coordination around that ankle is absolutely vital to keep the ankle strong. Lateral ankle sprains, they are a risk factor for for later life osteoarthritis, but keeping the ankle strong, adding more stability to it, and try and build up the coordination. Yeah, absolutely vital to keep on doing rehabilitation and building strength around the limb. Aching inside ankle when running will be so building strength around the ankle and the whole of the lower limb. Don't forget that the foot is connected to the leg bone, which is connected to the hip bone and all that. So building strength throughout the whole system is absolutely vital. Don't just think about the ankle. Although it might be the ankle that's aching, you need to build strength through the whole system. And watch our webinar coming up with Colin, which one's it's either Thursday or Monday. We're going to be doing one about gait style as well. So watch that one. That'll be really good for you, about aching inside the ankle when running. Would you consider a good length of time for someone to be able to balance for with eyes shut and open in the 40s? I'm not a great fan of eyes shut. I know some people do like it, but I'm not a great fan of that. So I think with eyes open, then I think you should be able to go on for a minute easily, with your eyes open if you're on a stable surface. If you can't do it for a minute, then practice. Start building it up. If you can't stand on one leg, then ideally just use something for a bit of stability, but try and get rid of the extra thing for stability as quickly as you can, and start building it up that way. But so somebody in the 40s, you should be able to stand on one leg for a minute with your eyes open. Would a memory foam pillow work as an unstable surface? Yes, absolutely brilliant. The AirTex pad is basically just memory foam, but it's a bit more rubbery, so your foot doesn't just sink into it like it does on memory foam. It does push back a bit, but yeah, memory foam absolutely fine. It's just, in fact, the more different surfaces that you can use, probably the better, because then your brain learns about different surfaces, and it can learn different information as well. So that it's all a matter of making your brain learn about the feedback that it's getting. So yeah, coming soon. We've got quite a few of these webinars coming up. Thursday, we're looking at buying running shoes, because there's a lot of nonsense around buying running shoes on the running media, and I really don't think it's as complicated as people think. So we've got Colin Papworth going to join me for that one. He's a brilliant podiatrist over in the Hope Valley in Peak District, and works in Sheffield as well. So yeah, he's going to be joining us for buying running shoes and running style and gait analysis, because he's really good on that kind of thing. So he's going to join us on Thursday and next Monday, again at 6 o'clock. So the person that was asking about aching on the inside of your ankles, then this one is going to be really good and helpful for you for that one. Then it's going to be myself on the 30th, talking about strength training with no gym, because you can get a lot of strength gains without having to use very heavy weights. People don't realise that. So we're going through that one. And then Ian Sadler, who's a great podiatrist down in Ipswich, is going to be coming on to talk about orthosis on May the 4th on Star Wars Day. So yeah, make sure you're tuning in for those, because they're going to be really good and informative as well. And that's everything from me. So if you have any more questions, just pop them in the comments bit. If you put the hashtag question, then it'll make it easier for me to see them when I'm going through later on. And if I can work it out, then this video should stay up on Facebook as well. But I might end up losing it when I finish the video, so I'm sorry if I do. So that's everything from me. So I will hopefully see you all around. Right, take care. Bye.